Fathers podcast, where we talk about all things kingdom with biblical-based encouragement from the Word of God.
It's a welcome space for the things we talk about: entrepreneurship, personal development, things that are going on, relationships, spirituality, marriage, just the whole kind of full blown. And I think one of the issues that I think people find is something that I can go to get a real conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a conversation not just from two males or from two females, but people in relationship as well. Because I think it's very important to have that dynamic too. And I don't see that serviced a lot, right?
Yeah, I don't see that a lot either. I think lots of people want people who you can relate to, especially as young couples, young black married couple who are just trying to do life together.
Yeah, it's not even like it's a YouTube thing or TikTok thing or any other thing. It's just a real blooming conversation. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first things that we wanted to dive into, we had this conversation separately, was about self-development and personal development, how important that is for not just life, but relationships, work, school.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our journeys probably look slightly different, even though we are married. We've been married for 7 years now. So I think our path of discovery has definitely been quite different. But self-development for me has been something that has been pinnacle in understanding who I am, which I think is essential for how you show up in the world. What about you?
And Ken always says 7 years, but, I realised I've been in a relationship with her for a lot longer than that. And that shows you who was in a relationship first. I committed and she was like, I'm thinking about this dude. I'm not quite sure. He's a bit too chatty. So I always have this running joke that I've been married to her for 10 years. She's just not having it. She's saying 7.
I'm the one that keeps the dates in the relationship anyway.
I don't keep any dates. She puts everything in the calendar. Hey, Key, marry someone who puts stuff in calendar if you're not a calendar person. Because she does organise my entire life.
Actually, I think our wedding day the date was actually quite strategic because for me, your birthday was a few days afterwards. So that's a good way of you remembering our anniversary. So kudos to you. That's quite clever.
I said to myself, I can't mess up this date. Anything with this date. But yeah, going back onto the topic is about the personal development, because it's important to know yourself in the beginning for you to then start and do what you need to do. And if you don't know yourself and you want to get to know yourself, like I always say this thing, how do you start? If you have no idea where to start, this is new to you, and in a black family, a Nigerian family, that we don't talk about this stuff a lot. We don't talk about what it means to develop yourself. Not in schooling, because we're very much in terms of going to school, you'll be a doctor, I know about every black family, but definitely in a Nigerian family, doctor, lawyer, engineer, everything else is arbitrary. I mean, you're speaking gibberish if you come to a parent and he says, I want to be a painter. Mom will look at you and say, you want to paint a house in my house? You would, so education-wise, we're very good.
Yeah.
But emotional and things that go on internal, we're not very good at.
I think one thing that you guys did have sort of growing up, from what you always tell me and from what I've seen from your mum and your auntie, is that they really did instill that knowing of who you are into you, or knowing, or trying to discover who you are first of all as the blueprint to your life. I think you did have that.
Yeah, we did.
Injected into you. And the rest was for you to discover almost.
That's so good that you said that, Chenz, because that's true. We definitely did have that. And I think when you go into a populous world that's not everything looks like you, and you're finding those things that look like you, it's important to know that who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And who your parents want you to be and how they encourage you to be, because a lot of lies are told in, unfortunately, education in terms of the history that we're taught, and it's always from a different perspective. It's not the perspective of the world view; it's the perspective of whoever won that particular war. And it's important for people to understand that there are atrocities that happen which are bad, and there's atrocities which happen which is just someone just rewriting what actually this is, and not telling the full story of actually what happened to make the situation what it is. And I think it's important to know yourself for you to be in this world and operate well.
Yeah, definitely. It starts from the home.
Starts from the home.
It starts from the home. It starts from the foundations of the home, really. Because, yes, the rest is a path of discovery, but it does start from the foundations of the home and what we see, what is modelled around us, what we are told as well. So, unfortunately, if we're not told good things, we will carry those bad things, which is not good. So we have to really try to get to the point of who we are as people.
So what do you think is a catalyst to how to begin? Like, what from your point of view, Shanna, what do you think is a way to begin?
I mean, for everybody, I think that's going to look different. But I think if we're talking practically, spend time with yourself. You have to really, really look within. Like, spend time with yourself. Go to a room that is calm and quiet, and get comfortable with being on your own. Get comfortable with being in your own thoughts and your feelings, your emotions. Like, when they come up, like, truly trying to understand. Sit with them, even if they're uncomfortable.
See, this is some reason.
That's the start.
It's some reason you said sit with your emotions, because I don't think any black boy is taught to sit with your emotions.
No, I don't think so either.
We're taught chin up, roll your sleeves up, man up, be a man, be strong.
Yeah,
we're not really taught what your emotions
actually are, what they serve, what the purpose of it is. Yeah.
How it's important to have emotional intelligence in situations. It's a very surface introduction or education of emotions. You're angry, be happy. You're happy, don't be sad.
Yeah.
Don't be angry at someone for stealing your toy. I'm like, but they stole my blooming toy.
And I think that's terrible, because you shouldn't actually tell anyone not to have an emotion. I think emotions are a normal part of life. They give us an indication as to what we need. It's actually like it highlights what we might need. An emotion serves a purpose. It doesn't mean we should stay in that emotion, but it actually serves a purpose. And we have to accept the emotion, first of all, to then action something.
You know what's so crazy? When you have a child, you are okay with child expressing emotion.
Do you think everybody is, though?
But when the child becomes older, you then tell the child to stop expressing emotion.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
That's so warped. So they're babies crying.
Yeah.
I'm hungry and they cry. And you're like, oh, baby, you have lots of time.
What do you need? Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah.
They get older and you tell them to stop expressing that much emotion.
Yeah.
That's so messed up. So they just get punished for expressing how they feel.
Yeah.
And it's not explained as in, okay, you're angry because of this particular thing. This is just why you shouldn't be angry in terms of that particular thing. This is how you can express your emotions effectively, so we can start the communication.
Absolutely.
It's just so
I think
crazy.
A lot of people don't know that. I think a lot of people go through life not really truly understanding how to accept their own emotion, how to sit with their own emotions, good and bad. So therefore, they don't know then how to regulate their own child's, or to appreciate their own child's maybe difficult emotions at times, because they find it hard to do that for themselves. You can only give as much as you give yourself. So knowledge is power. So
true. I think for me, how to begin is what I found, because being a man, it's hard for me to understand. I found it hard for me to understand how my emotions work, and still to this day, I'm still learning how to best to facilitate and to give out those constructively say what my emotions are at that particular time, and that takes some time. But I think I looked at to identify, or from where to begin. You need to identify what your identity is on a subatomic particle. Now, I'm going to unpack that, because people are like, oh. So basically what that means is, what is your belief around who you are? Where does that stem from? What is the nucleus to your identity, what is that one thing that you wrap yourself around as in your truth? Is it, I'm a great footballer? Is it, I'm great at my work that I do? And you think about, is it the right thing to attach your identity to? What happens if your leg gets broken as a footballer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you lose self.
Yeah.
What happens if you lose your job? Then you lose self. So I think diving deeper into your identity and looking at what that subatomic particle is for yourself helps to then start the process. And sometimes that is a work of a couple weeks, months.
Oh, yeah. Years, even.
Years.
I don't think we ever stop learning who we are.
No, to get to the point where you can start.
Yeah.
You can begin.
To at least begin.
For me, it was hard. Relating to myself, let alone relating to a woman that I then brought into my life to love, and to then explain to her why I wake up on the day and I'm annoyed or grouchy, and I don't actually know why I'm annoyed or grouchy.
Yeah.
Or I can't express why I'm annoyed or grouchy because I don't have the tools to express how I'm annoyed or grouchy.
And sometimes you don't know, and sometimes we don't know, and that's okay as well.
But even having the tools to just express why.
Yeah.
You don't need to know why, just have the tools to let that person know it's not them.
Yeah. Sometimes we weren't taught that. We weren't taught that. Hence why it's a discovery process, and it doesn't stop at one day or 1 year. Sometimes it's years. We're constantly learning, who we are, why we do things, how we do things. It's a discovery process.
So my question to you, Chenz, is what led you down that self-discovery route? Like, what was the catalyst for you to begin?
I think I've always had, I just think innately, I've always had this desire, first of all, to learn about the world around me, the mind, and myself. I think the main thing that made me try to really understand who I was came from the type of background that I came from, and just how I felt different within my family. As the youngest, I felt like I was different. I always felt like I fell into this role of almost the listener and caretaker for other people's problems, and I felt a deep sense of empathy for other people's problems, and also just I felt things quite deeply, and I just felt like that propelled me into a space of wanting to know how I truly showed up in the world. So that's where it began. And one day I just bought a book, a personal development book by a guy called Steve Pavlina. And I think I was about 22 or 23. I just bought a book randomly. So I knew that I was searching for something more then. I knew there was just this inner knowing of wanting to grow, wanting to be better, wanting to be the best version of myself. And I didn't know that would take me down a long path of discovery, self-discovery.
I think, but that's amazing. Number one, I didn't think like that at all. I think my route to self-development,
everyone's journey is different.
Yeah. I think that's amazing that you had that much knowledge about yourself to know that something needs to change. And for me, it was like whenever I hit a rock, then I change something.
Yeah.
When I hit a wall, then I change something. I hit a wall, I change something.
But don't get me wrong, I feel like it was almost like just a feeling like something bugging me inside. Yeah. And I felt like my household almost was caving in a little bit.
Yeah.
Again, I guess it didn't happen straight away, but I knew that I was going through a process of change, transformation, and it happened slowly. It happened slowly, but I felt like the tools were just put in front of me.
That's amazing.
So it wasn't like I knew everything sort of straight away, what the answers were going to be, what exactly was happening. And actually what my position was in my household. I didn't really know then, and that I was 22, 23. Now I'm 34.
Yeah.
So it's been a process. And now obviously I've discovered a lot more about my family. I've discovered a lot more about my position within my family, and how things have sort of manifested throughout that time. And I feel like that was just a sign. Just getting that book and just starting that process was just exactly what I needed to be where I am now. 100%.
Yeah, that's so important for people to know that internally you always have that push.
Yeah, 100%.
I think for me, my push might have been just hitting the wall.
Yeah.
And then knowing that you need to change direction because you hit a wall.
Yeah.
And not knowing that that's partly personal development, knowing that you need to change. You know, mine wasn't as studious as yours. I was more like, yeah, I know, but like, I'm just thinking about it from the mindset. You know, mine was very much like, you know, Neanderthal, but change. And I think for me, meeting you, looking at what we wanted to do, started to help to fuel some of the things that I wanted to kind of change rapidly and change quickly. And I've always had a good focus set or a good drive, a driven nature. But sometimes you need that, you know, that catalyst, that extra log on the fire. In my case, Chenz was more of a propofol or propozine or whatever they call it. Whatever they call it, gasoline. The other one, the propane. The propane kind of stuff.
Oh my God.
Exploded everything and started moving forward. So, you know, I look at that and I look at where I was and where I am now, and I see such a massive growth and understanding that where you begin doesn't matter. What matters is you begin.
Absolutely. That first step is definitely being aware.
Yeah, just
that's
saying
like step one.
Something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something. I don't know what it is, but something needs to change. And I think that is always the bigger help. And for guys who are scared of the emotional side of where you're going to get to, is you need it, because you need to understand there is nothing wrong with an emotion. You don't push it down. You bring it up. You let it happen, and you deal with the fallout. The more you don't let happen, the bigger your reactions become. So then your reactions become not appropriate for the situation. And that's a big problem with most people, with most guys that I found, is that your reaction become bigger than what the situation is.
Yeah.
And, you know, coming from our background, that I'm coming from a spiritual background. You know, I look at the life of Jesus and I look at how his reactions was always in line with the situation. It was never just explosion for no reason. There was a reason behind it. There was a message behind it. I think as any human being, you need to look at why you're reacting a certain way.
Yeah.
Look at that from you. It could be whatever you hold dear, but look at that side of it from your perspective.
Yeah.
And try and react accordingly to the situation, and make sure your emotions have been coming out steadily, and it's not just an explosion on the people that you love most.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I think there's a lot of unpacking of self there, because sometimes it's hard to get to the bottom of why we might react a certain way. We'd hope that hopefully the next generation doesn't have to explode before we start trying to learn about who we are and our lives and maybe our childhood and all of those things. But often, sometimes why we might explode might link back to what we had seen modelled, for instance. So I think sometimes, you know, I think that sometimes people don't always want to sit with emotions or look into the past because it's uncomfortable. But you have to feel it. You have to feel it to heal it. You really have to feel it to heal it.
Word.
You do. You have to feel it to heal it. That's step one, being aware of it, being aware of being aware of how you show up in your relationships, in the world. And if there's areas that we need to change, then we can actually, first of all, name it, call it for what it is, and then we can actually action it to make it better. And hopefully we'll be better. We'll be better versions of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we always have to use, we have to now delve into personal development because we've gone through such a terrible experience. Like anybody can delve into getting to know themselves. It doesn't mean you have to do it because something bad has happened. It's just that obviously in our lives, what has propelled us into those areas of self-discovery and personal development have also come from a place of desperation, so to speak. What do you think was the major change for you when you felt like something really needed to change in your life? What do you think? When do you think that was? Can you pinpoint at the time?
Yeah, I think my drive has always been a gift and a curse. I think one of the key things that happened to me is a bit of spout of depression when I was really young. In terms of in my college to university years, I went into a depressive spiral, not knowing that that's what depression is. And, being, again, I hark back to this, being a man, no one tells you what depression is. No one has, there is a lot of fear in the psychology of things. And, you don't know that that's what depression is. And one of the things that...
How are you feeling?
I'm unhappy. Just unhappy with my situation where I was and not thinking I could get out of it. And I think the issue was not knowing you can get out of something.
Yeah.
And I think the crushing feeling of, it just felt like a weight. And I remember sometimes I would sleep and I would feel like I'm sinking into the bed and the room is sinking on top of me. And that's like, I would be dreaming that I'm awake and this is happening. And I'll wake up just feeling lower than when I went to bed. Because you're just falling. If people talk about it, like I'm talking about it, like, think of the best way I can describe it so you can get an image of it is, I don't know if anyone's seen Get Out, but Get Out bit where Daniel Kaluuya goes back into the black. Yeah. And you can see him just like falling into this darkness.
Yeah.
That's the feeling.
For all the visual people
For
out
all the
there.
visual people. That's the feeling. So that's what I felt in that depression. And
when do you think was the height of that? When was the height of your depression?
I think the height of my depression was about a couple months after my mother left the UK and she went to the US. And I felt alone. I felt...
Could you pinpoint that it was depression then, or was it only now, like years later, you've discovered that?
A couple of years later, I realised that it was depression. And knowing how deep it was, because I started to... When I got out of that spiral, I started to research why was that spiral like that, and I looked at it, and there was lots of descriptions of what depression felt like and what it was, and how empty it felt, and how unsurmountable it felt. And I realised that, wow, okay, that was a depressive cycle that I was in.
So what do you think was the catalyst for you getting out of it?
Luckily, I had a really good upbringing in terms of what you said earlier, where we were always told about who we were. And I realised in my head, in my heart actually, that this is not right.
Was it like in a day, or like
no, it wasn't a day.
1 hour, one night, the midnight hour?
Where you were praying, you were praying, you were asking yourself questions, you're just thinking, is this it? And it just got to a point where I was just like, yeah, like this is not me.
Yeah.
And when I think I realised this is not me, because I felt like all my drive has been sucked out, everything is sucked out. I said, this is not me. And when I said those words out loud, this is not me, I think something charged.
Yeah.
Like something
amazing.
Sparked.
Amazing.
And I think that's what itself is knowing self.
Yeah.
Knowing that the problem isn't you.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That helps the change.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Wow.
That's what it is.
That ultimate sort of surrender at that time as well.
The situation is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's not you. Yeah. You are so much worth. You're worth so much more than you actually think. Like every human life is so important. I remember I listened to this Gary Vee thing called Monday Motivation. He swears a lot on that. And I'm not going to give it word for word, but he says stuff like, in the universe, like, right, you could have been a bus. You could have been a tree.
Exactly.
A tree's a living thing, right?
Yeah.
You could have been a tree. You could have been a plant. But in the millions of different variations of life, you could have been anything.
Yeah.
But you're a human being in this day and age that has 2 hands and 2 feet, and you can change things. Or even if you don't have 2 hands and 2 feet, there's many of motivational speakers. I remember this guy he's a mad motivational speaker. He's so good. He's got no feet and no legs, but he lives the most unchained life.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he has life.
Yeah.
Breathing.
He has just
living.
So much gratitude for life.
Gratitude just for life.
So
and I think, how much more me, who has both my hands and my feet, why am I less grateful for my situation? And I'm not saying like I'm saying just know self enough that if you need help, go get help.
Yeah, and practice gratitude.
And practice being grateful for just where you're, just the breathing for the life you have. Because after COVID, I think everyone is grateful for life.
Yeah, definitely.
Because so many people were fighting something invisible that they can't see.
Yeah.
And that is just the most scariest thing. You don't know what you're fighting, but you know it can kill you.
Yeah. 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 We're all human, aren't we?
Everyone's human.
We're all human.
And unfortunately, it was a great leveler in terms of doesn't matter your rich or poor.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're human,
we're all on the same page.
Everyone is a human being.
That's what that period made me feel like.
Money is not important. It's about your family and who you're with.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing that you can do for yourself.
Yeah.
Is be around people who validate your existence. I would say. Validate your existence, and that could be your loved one, your dog.
Yeah.
Your dog depends on you, your cat, your hamster. It just validates your existence, and then just know that you are important to be here. And
I think what you said was powerful, though, because it's great now that you're able to pinpoint that was probably depression. But just I find it inspiring, just the fact that one day you just said, "This is not me," and that you knew from then that something needed to change, and that was almost a catalyst for you.
And I would say this as well: it doesn't go away. People think you deal with depression once and that's it. I'm good. That's not how it works. How it works is every day you realize something.
Yeah.
And you make your best to make a better decision the next day. That's just what keeps your mind healthy. Because, the mind is a battlefield.
Yeah.
And most of your life is a battlefield of the mind.
Absolutely.
So, just because you've experienced something once doesn't mean you're never going to experience it again. But you recognize the patterns.
Yeah. And you know what rock bottom feels like.
You know what it feels like. So you just...
there's only up from there.
You remember the feeling.
But you remember, yeah.
And then you pivot.
Yes.
That's what you need to do. Remember the feeling, pivot. Because all your experiences, you as a person, are a summed... You are a sum of all your experiences that make you you.
So what do you think some of the practical steps are to pivot in that moment? If you ever feel like your mental health is maybe dwindling or whatnot, what do you think some of the practical steps are to how we can better look after ourselves?
You know what's key, but you taught me? Getting out into nature.
Oh, you like nature now?
Look, I was born in Nigeria. I care not for bugs and spiders and all that stuff. I feel like outside should be outside, not inside. So life always wants to bring in plants on life. Plant for what? Whatever. But I'm saying nature's a good thing because you realise how small you are.
Yeah.
When you're out in a big, expansive field, you realise how tiny you are.
Yeah.
When you walk up to a hill, you look down and you realise how small people are.
No, I didn't actually look at it like that, actually.
Once you look at it, you feel how insignificant you are. You are in this big world. And you are one part of an orchestra of million things.
Yeah.
And once you realise those things, you're like, my situation isn't that big because the world is bigger. calm down. And it just helps you to realise and see other things. I think that's one of the things. Going to nature, also, is one of the key things. Experience, go for a walk, breathe clean,
I was going to say, there's something about breathing just the fresh air.
Clean air.
That does something for your mind.
That's one of the things I do love about the UK. Is the countryside is beautiful and you can breathe clean, fresh air. If you are in
you just feel like you've got more clarity in a way.
In the city, we do treasure our green spaces. So go to a green space. Anywhere with trees. One of the things that you always say to me is that you realise once you left East London how not green it was. Not that East London isn't green, but you didn't have access to loads of green spaces. And
so much
that's one of the key things. And being in Kent, it's green. It's green. You're 20, 30 minutes, not even 20, 10, 15 minutes away from a big green space.
Yeah, which is great. Which
is just amazing. So that's one of the key things for me, is having that. Another key thing is putting your plans down on paper. When a plan goes to paper, it becomes a goal. Once you can see your goal, you've got your vision.
Yeah.
And that's such a key thing. And it doesn't have to be a material goal. It can be a interior goal. How you feel. Have 10 wake up green mornings where you wake up, you go outside and you walk. And you say, I've done it. Wow. Feels so good.
Yeah.
Or drink 2 litres of water a day.
Yeah.
Another key thing. Exercise. I always just say that, going to exercise, I was like, I can't because this is it. But I realised, look, it's me. Yeah? It's me. You make your rule and you choose it. Yeah? So if exercise is one of the key things, do that as well. And then have a space for your hobbies.
Definitely.
We don't do that enough.
No.
We need to have hobbies. It's small things. It could be small things. It could be collecting stamps. It could be, watching, your favourite, world cinema film titles. It could be collecting little figurines. It could be buying every old iPad or iPod that has been released and having them on the shelf or whatever in a glass case. Anything. Could be collecting plants, watching planes. Those are free.
Yeah.
That's what you can do to help.
I think so. I think those things are very important. Those practical steps are very important, definitely.
And for you, what do you think some of the key kind of steps is if someone is dealing with that sort of thing? What would you say to them to encourage them?
Let's just put it out there that, first of all, clinical depression is clinical depression. Some people do have chemical imbalances, so it's not based on that. But the fact that you were able to kickstart yourself almost into change, that's a great thing. But not everybody has that, so I recognise that not everyone can do that as well. I think all the things that you've mentioned are perfect. All the things that you mentioned are things that I think are very, very amazing practical steps. I think some of the other things that I would add that I like, which is similar to what you said in terms of putting your plans down on paper. I appreciate journaling. I love journaling. I think being able to write your thoughts down on paper, even though sometimes, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes articulating what you're feeling can be hard. Sometimes we don't always even know what we're feeling. But there's times that we can articulate it and we can find at least key words. So at least being able to write it down, to almost unpack your emotions, unpack your thoughts, helps us to process it better, especially if it's written down.
Yeah.
So I've definitely just tried to action that, and that's something that's helped me along the way.
I thought it's so awesome, and shameless plug, don't care. But Chenz has created some amazing notebooks that I use myself as well.
Journals.
And it's journals, and it's important to journal. And as I said, writing stuff down, right? So there's this journal that she's made. Beauty of Nakedness is the female version with some empowerment quotes as well.
Yeah.
Just
the Naked Journal.
The Naked Journal is called. And then she's done with some critique from me, created another one
healthy
called
collaboration.
the Raw Journal, which is aimed at guys, right? And it has quotes and things to spur us on to keep on wanting to improve and write things down. So, she's taught me that journaling is an important part, and I've started to write things down on my phone or books or whatever I can find. But now I have a space that I know that this is for my thoughts.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's just important to, as a ritual that you can create, something that can help you have a process, is to go back to a particular journal and know that this is the space for my thoughts.
And that might look different for everybody. That might look different for everyone.
Yeah, but
there's something powerful in writing down.
Yeah, of course.
Your thoughts, your visions, your plans, your dreams, something powerful in writing it down and looking at it, looking back at it as well.
Yeah.
Something powerful in that process.
It's so cool. And just so, to add some reference to it as well, I watch a lot of $1 Million Listing, and I watch a lot of the old $1 Million Listing stuff. And there was a New York one where Luis is in his room or in his penthouse, or apartment, I don't know if it's penthouse, but in his apartment, and he's writing inside a journal, journaling his thoughts down, and he's sipping like a cognac or whatever. And I'm like, right, that stuff is cool. I'll sip cognac and write in my journal. But my son Mike will make too much noise. A lovely boy, but anyway, I digress. But seeing that as well, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And what Shannon was saying was actually makes sense. Oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm seeing other people do it. So, there is some power in there if you want a safe space to write it down, and that helps to create the ritual for people to go to one place. This particular journal is where you put your ideas or your hopes, your dreams. It's a safe
place, and there's no one looking at it, no one critiquing it. It's literally just your thoughts to just be real and raw for that moment.
And just great. She's got 2 sizes: large size and a pocket size. Pocket size you carry yourself. Large size your own, or if you put it in your house or whatever, or you might just like big books. So you might you might love that college feel of carrying big books in your bag.
Yeah.
I remember when you had to carry books. Now everything's on the internet. I always carry books. I had this big IT, but anyway, I digress. But yeah, this is so amazing to have this chat, and I'm grateful for Kenna that we create this space. So I think it's important for other people to understand that it's good to chat.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely.
For me as a guy, that's an amazing feeling to know that it's good to chat because we don't do enough of it.
Yeah,
I think
at least we know that you're not on your own. Other people are going through things. Other people are dealing with things. So having honest conversations that people can relate to is very important. You know,
awesome. Yeah. So the chat powered by Beauty of Nakedness. Chenna also does some other things as well with Life Fuel as well, which is a platform that she has for people to empower themselves and to help think about personal development in
self-discovery.
A different way, and self-discovery. And that's amazing. Well-being, about your well-being as a guy. After COVID, well-being is super important, and I realised that now. And being able to have a pause and think about it and then apply yourself, because I think it's important, because our lives were just too busy before, and sometimes slowing down helps us to look forward.
Yeah,
and that's strange, but the slower you become, the easier it is to see.
Absolutely.
And that makes actually physical sense. Think about it. If you're running really fast, you can't see what's around you. But if you slow it down, it helps you to see and be present. So awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
To all the listeners out there, hopefully this helped you too. And we'll see you soon on the chat.
Yep. Things, or what is that turning point for them is different. Mine wasn't a total... I don't even know. It wasn't like not knowing... Well, actually, if I really think about my family history, was it a platform to be able to know who I was, really, without coming out of that scenario? Like, was I allowed to know myself, or was I just going through life? So it's amazing, because obviously, faith as small as a mustard seed, it's all you need for God to put you on the right path. That's all you need. So he put the tools in front of me. So it wasn't a case of like, like starting from scratch. Like, I knew the basics of who I was, but I wasn't allowed to delve into who I was. I wasn't fed that. I wasn't told enough from my own family. I was seeking outside of my own household. Searching and seeking.
Yeah.
Knew there was something more. Always knew there was something more that I was looking for. Yeah, and I realised that there was a lot of dysfunction in my family. A lot of dysfunction. So, yeah, I just felt like I didn't really get a chance to even really connect with who I was in a way. And that's really something, not even just being able to sit with yourself and understand really who you are. I felt like I didn't have the right environment to do that.
Yeah.
Too much going on, chaos, too much happening around you that you don't really get to know who you are, explore who you are.
Yeah.
It was only when I got out of that environment that I was able to really, even though it started within the environment, but I was able to really connect better with myself when I was out of the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to be a bit more free. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. I guess with yours, it's a situational move towards self-development. Mine was a emotional deterrent from a spiral, if you will, because mine was just because I needed to get out of that state, because that wasn't leading to me for anything. I was behind on financially and lots of different things as well.
Yeah.
So, it was an insurmountable feeling.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to help me to be fruitful in any shape, way, or form.
Yeah.
So the only way to deal with it is to get out. And, with depression comes lots of suicidal tendencies or thought processes, I'll say. I don't know why I said processes like that.
I actually don't know either, but I'm just looking at you. Looking at you thinking, I'm so enlightened by your story.
Yeah, thought processes.
Yeah.
And it's some of them is suicidal. Because that's the way to end it.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
I think
so bad that you think that's the way to end it.
I'm definitely glad you've come out of that. That's for sure. I'm definitely glad you've come out of that. I think there's just, as we talked about before, there's just, everyone's journey is going to look different, and there's just beauty in knowing and having that turning point. As I said, that turning point is going to look different for everybody, but having it is there's beauty in having that turning point, isn't there? Because that's the change. That's where the change begins. That's where the change begins.
So cool.
Yeah, and it's not even just for us; it's for our children that we decide to have, and some of those patterns that we don't want passed down to our children. All of those things. When we delve in, we know how we can change it. But it's having the knowledge first.
Yeah, and having the tools to help you to change them as well.
Yeah, but also seeking out the tools, because some people might have the tools.
Yeah, seeking out the tools.
But they stop learning. They don't want to understand. They don't want to keep growing and keep learning. And sometimes we have to be uncomfortable. We have to get out of our comfort zone to learn more about who we are. We have to get out of our comfort zone. That's where growth happens, isn't it? Yeah,
and I think a quote that comes to mind is from Dr. Miles Monroe, when he said, "When the purpose of a thing is not known, abuse happens." So even with the tool, if the purpose of the tool is not known, you would abuse it all. You won't use it for its intended purpose. For instance, when people use a spoon as a knife, a spoon is not a knife. African people did that a lot. They cut meat with a spoon. It's just the most ridiculous thing I've seen in my life. But yeah,
I think I've done that before, actually.
It's not a knife, all right? Abusing the spoon.
It's not as easy, actually.
It's not, is it? So that's one of the key things I think to take away from tools. is knowing the purpose of that tool and how to use it effectively.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes people use things and it's not effective. And then they think it's not the right tool.
Yes. But if you're in this constant pursuit to learn and develop, hopefully you'll be aligned with the right tools eventually, because you'll be searching for growth and learning new things, right?
And you learn to practice with that tool to make it proficient.
Exactly.
Because the issue sometimes as well in this generation, in this world, is everyone wants things microwave.
Yeah.
They want things fast. Mm-hmm. I've used a tool, it doesn't work, so I'm going to throw it away. How many times did you use a tool? Just the one time. That doesn't make sense. You're meant to consistently use that tool for it to actually make some sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. So even when we talk about journaling, it's not journal once and then I've arrived. It's a consistent going back to that, as I talked about it earlier, that ritual, doing it consistently, mm-hmm. helping you to create the anchor point to your healing.
Yes.
I think people don't talk about it a lot. What is the anchor point to your healing? Why are you doing this? Don't forget the reason why you're in it.
Yeah.
Don't forget what led you to that place.
Absolutely.
Because that's what you don't want to go back to.
Absolutely.
So if you don't know that, you're going to go back there.
Yeah.
And that's where we kind of talk about, addictive behavioural patterns. And you kind of start to delve into people who go back to a situation which isn't for them. Because
they often go back because they feel comfortable.
And sometimes the comfort is wrong.
Yes, and they don't realise that.
They don't realise it because you're in it.
Yes.
Until you step out and you see something completely different. And you realise, holy crap, that was not right.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until I had space from that.
Yeah. Yes.
And a lot of people trapped in that circle.
Yes. Yeah.
That's why it's so important to seek out the tools and continually use those tools so you can have healing on a perpetual scale. I say this because there's another metaphor that I use. If you have a scar, the pain's gone. Well, so if you have a wound, should I say, the pain can go from the wound, but the scar stays. Mm-hmm. And the scar is a reminder of the pain.
Yeah.
So when you look at the scar, you remember the pain.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you out.
Yeah.
Like when the kid goes to fire for the first time and they remember the pain and they see the scar. And I remember, if I go to that thing again, that pain's going to happen. And I don't want that pain. So I've learned to stay away from it. Such a key thing to unpick. There's so much to unpick. I think the tools version is good. How to use your tools.
Yeah.
Where to find the tools.
Yeah.
What are your tools? Tools to help the process.
Yeah. And it's a journey, isn't it? It's definitely a journey. Healing is not linear. It's not one day you wake up and it's like, oh, I'm healed from everything, every pain that I've ever felt in my life. No, it's a journey. It's a part of the human experience as well. Accepting where we're at and just being on this pursuit of learning and developing ourselves.
And some wounds take a long time to heal.
Yeah.
Some wounds you need to wash out.
Yes.
You need to wash out periodically.
Yeah.
For new skin to grow and to heal it.
Yeah.
Especially if
the wound comes from family, for instance, because that's what we were born into.
Family can hurt you.
Yeah.
And actually, in most senses, family hurts you more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing you see.
Yeah.
The first thing you experience. The first thing you feel.
Yeah. That's where we get a lot of our self-belief from.
And the wrong self-belief instilled at such a young age is a recipe for a life of unwholeness. I would say I'll call it that. Not a wrong life, but a life on unwholeness. You might not understand why certain things are certain ways until you know that it's wrong.
Yeah.
And you need to fix it.
Yeah, definitely.
And you need to have help and the tools to fix it. And I think conversation, if you're not into, like for me, I always tell you that I don't want to speak to psychologists because psychologist doesn't know me. And I think you're like, well, that's the whole purpose of psychologists. I don't know, because men aren't given that option a lot of the time, that then becomes a weird thing. But I feel as though in the next couple of generations, it would be a normal thing.
Yeah, I think therapy in general. As you said, I think therapy.
And I think having that with your wife or someone who you trust is a normal thing.
Yeah.
And it should happen more and more often.
Yes.
And hopefully some things like this that we do would help people to have that conversation.
Yeah, because I think essentially that is therapy. Therapy doesn't always have to be sitting with an actual therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Therapy can be literally just be sitting with somebody that you trust and somebody that you love and being able to talk about things. That's therapeutic for some people. That works for some people. Therapy is journaling. Therapy might be going to the top of a mountain and screaming your thoughts out loud. Therapy looks different for different people. And I think hopefully in a few years' time and generations to come, that will be a normalized thing. It won't be because, oh, you're crazy, I need to go to a therapist, which shouldn't be the case anyway, because you don't go to a therapist because you're crazy.
I know, right?
You actually don't. Don't. You know. But yeah, hopefully these things will become more normalized. Certain conversations will become more normalized. Yeah, and then we can all be on the path of better self-discovery. Really. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to Kingdom Matters Podcast. I hope the content today has encouraged and blessed you. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, like, and share. We appreciate you.